on Baseball Tonight, a chance for clinching. With fellow Chicago champs looking on, the Sox try to keep the heat on the Rangers and put them away. Well, Toronto's also thinking title. They could cut out the Yanks and hope a Tiger homer this huge was enough to bury Baltimore. If it's a playoff preview in Philly, could DJ and company be the first to defeat Schilling since the break? Regardless, Bonds continues bombing down their necks. We'll also get under the skin of Nolan Ryan when asked if cheating is any part of his repertoire.
At my age, doing what I've done brings skepticism sometimes.
It's all coming up on a souvenir edition of Baseball Tonight. Cherish it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday edition of Baseball Tonight. Peter Gammons and Dave Campbell are with us. I'm Gary Miller. We've got lots to get to in this hour, including potential clinches. But before we get to the inevitable, the undecided, with Atlanta finishing up in Philly, that affecting two races. For the first time in National League history, divisions are being influenced by outsiders. The balanced schedule has forced Atlanta into a late-season road trip through the East's top two teams in these last 2 weeks, providing games which have had a profound effect on both divisions. What they hope will be their final regular season road game had Steve Avery trying to regain his stride against Curt Schilling, who hadn't lost since the All-Star break. And again, a potential playoff preview. Dave Justice at the plate is team down 1-0 in the second when Schilling gives up the gopher ball. And Justice breaks his team and
no matter what happens, we're not going to get down as a ball club, and it showed. I mean, after the first game here, we could have easily just shut it down, but we didn't. We showed what we were made of these past two games.
They asked me about psychological edge. Well, I said there wasn't anybody in this clubhouse smart enough to know what psychological edge meant, so I don't think if we'd have won 2 out of 3, I don't think it would have been any different than losing 2 out of 3. We still got to play.
they may not be smart, but they're successful. So is Atlanta. Otis Nixon, you saw scoring. He's opening an electronics store in Atlanta called the O-Zone, and that's where Otis has been the past 2 weeks, averaging a run and a half a game. More than half the time he scores at least twice a game. He's got 20 runs in a 14-game span. At the stick, the Giants, after their 5th straight win, Swift coming in with a San Francisco out of the race. Avery didn't pitch too badly today, but they've been very concerned about Avery and Smoltz down the stretch. What has happened to them when the Braves need them most?
Well, if you ask the Expos and the Phillies people, they'll say, look, these two guys have finally shown that they're a little bit human. They both seem to be pretty tired. I mean, Avery has pitched well in 3 of his last 6 starts. He's also been knocked out. Hasn't even gotten to the 5th inning here. You see, the sign of being tired every other start. Overthrowing, got the fastball up. You see he's mouthing, get it down. We'll censor that a little bit. And the thing with Smoltz, he has been such a dominant guy. Maybe we asked too much. You see there, you see him a little extra hook in the back of his delivery. That's usually a sign that he's a little bit tired. Now, Maddox and Glavine have been absolutely brilliant. Matter of fact, Glavine is throwing the ball better, got his curveball back better than any time since the middle of 1991. And it could be Swift and Burkett hit the wall and get a little bit tired, overcame it. Could very well happen with these two guys. And my guess is if they get to the postseason, Avery and Smoltz will be what they've always been. Brilliant.
Well, an awful rough road trip to, as I mentioned, it's very uncommon. We got the balanced schedule. They had to go through Montreal and Philly. They made it through there in fine order, Dave. But the Giants are right there. Bond's bat is picked up. But I think most of us would agree that coming into those final 4 games at Chavez Ravine, the Giants better at least be tied.
Yeah, and the other thing, Gary, is they really can't afford to look forward to that series yet from the standpoint they do have to play the Padres tomorrow, and then they've got to go after the Colorado Rockies, who are playing terrific baseball, by the way. They have the 3rd best record in baseball, I think, since the middle of August, so they're playing good ball. So the Giants can't afford to look past them, but hey, that series at Chavez Ravine, Tommy Lasorda has been waiting to exact revenge for I can't begin to tell you how long, because in 1982, you know, the Giants knocked the Dodgers out when Joe Morgan hit the home run off Terry Forster. Atlanta won it on the last day of the season. 1991, Braves and Dodgers tied going to the last weekend. Trevor Wilson beats the Dodgers on Saturday. A shutout. Braves celebrate the flag. And even the history, you go back to 1951 and 62, both times the Giants knocked the Dodgers out. So Lasorda, whose club hasn't played a meaningful game in a long time, he will have these guys primed for this weekend.
Their pitching's been fantastic all season, and they've really been hard on the Giants so far this season. Let's check the American League now. With the Twins and A's having alternated as titleists since 1987, the White Sox had a chance this afternoon to not only break that stranglehold in the AL West, but also win their first crown in 10 years. To do it, they have to sweep one of the 3 teams that has never won a division, the Rangers. And Texas didn't want that to happen at their expense. I don't know. I guess everyone is packing into Comiskey Park these days. They want to see it happen, and they want to see spectacular D. Ellis Burks picking up Lance Johnson, coming over from right field to make the grab there. Rob Ducey getting robbed by Joey Cora, who himself spends some time in right field and gets it to Thomas for the out. And then with Gene Nelson out in relief, Burks does it with his bat. A gapper, bouncing it off the wall. The White Sox were already up 2-1. They took a commanding 5-1 lead, helped by that 2-run double in the 7th. In the 8th, 1 out, 2 on. Here come the Rangers. Chris James, who had the huge 2-run homer earlier in this series, to tie Friday's game and send it to extra innings, scores Lee and Hulse, and suddenly it's a 2-run game. So time runs on. Roberto Hernandez, who had given up that home run to James on Friday, comes through, K's John Russell, gets his 37th save, and gets out of it in the game 1 of a doubleheader. Remember, they were rained out on Saturday. They get just 8 hits to the White Sox, but an outstanding pitching performance from Jason Beret, who moves to 11-5. Gonzalez sat out this doubleheader, but Dean Palmer did homer in this game. So those 2 and Palmeiro give Texas a trio with 113 home runs that ties the American League record for 3 players of the 63 and 1964 Minnesota Twins. Sox 4th straight win was also Beret's 6th in a row. The second game, the Sox sent out Alex Fernandez for the clincher. That's the champion from Chicago. Scottie Pippen looking for a close look to see if somebody else in Chicago can bring a title to the Windy City. Burks again playing outstanding defense, robbing Dean Palmer. Fernandez cruising along with a 1-0 lead, and then David Hulse, of all people, hits the first home run of his career, and it's a huge one. Ties the game at 1. Rangers take a 2-1 lead. Now we're in the 8th. Pudge Rodriguez. There goes Cora again, spending time in right field. Thomas with the stretch. They call him safe. He's off the bag. Franco had doubled. He moves to 3rd. Check out the replay. Great stretch by the big hurt, the big call. Next batter, 1 out. Palmer with a routine double play ball. Again, he beats it off. Thomas off the bag. Texas takes a 3-1 lead. Bottom of the 9th, 2 outs. Texas up a run. Runners on the corners, but here comes a charging Donald Harris to rob Joey Cora with Frank Thomas on deck. Texas holds on. They don't allow Chicago to clinch it at their expense. So the Sox are now 28-14 over the last 41. Pavlik unbeaten in 10, wins it 11-6. Fernandez takes the loss. He is just his 4th loss in 13 decisions at home. While McDowell is the Cy Young favorite, the White Sox would not have won the West without Wilson Alvarez and Jason Beret. They've clinched at least a tie. Since August 24th, this pair is unbeaten. Beret now has 51 strikeouts in his last 40 innings, while Alvarez has straightened out his wildness, jumped his strikeout rate, and has a microscopic ERA this past month. Peter, we talk about McDowell, who pretty much has locked up the Cy Young Award now. But as I said, these two guys are unbeaten. You don't usually look to young players to solidify your pitching staff. But what is the key to how well these guys have pitched?
Well, I think to start with, I think having McDowell at the front of the rotation, allowing these guys to establish themselves, and Alex Fernandez to establish himself as the #2 starter is very important. But during the winter, Ron Schuler and Gene Lamont took so much heat from people. You got to go out and get John Smiley. You got to get a veteran pitcher. And Schuler and Lamont said, no, we've got these young guys, and they have great arms, and we're going to stick with them. Well, we've seen what's happened here. Beret and Alvarez have been 2 of the best young pitchers in baseball. I mean, Beret's, he was an A-ball last year. I mean, he has overpowering. He's been getting up to 95 with a little giddy up in his arm. And his curveball, which he's really been throwing well since the middle of August with the help of Jackie Brown, they're getting him at 85 miles an hour. That's smokes level. And Alvarez, since he went down to AAA and worked with Rick Peterson, the minor league pitching coach, has come back, thrown fastballs. He's going less with his curveball, dominating with his control. He's been sensational. I mean, they're going to pitch the 3rd and 4th games of the playoffs against the Blue Jays if and when they get there, and I think it's going to be very interesting. But to think that these two guys would have won 25 games for the White Sox is beyond any prognosticator's imagination. Credit to people who know the game rather than talk about it.
Yeah, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but they both clinched at least a tie. And, Dave, if we look at Toronto and the White Sox, the Jays are starting to pitch better. Right. We might give an edge to the White Sox, though, in pitching overall, especially with these 2 young guys. They've tried everything they can in the DH. I think half their roster has been DHs this year. It hasn't worked out that well. But George Bell has really asserted himself. What do you think is the meaning behind his coming back from his injury and really...
Well, I think a couple of things, Gary. First of all, George Bell was challenged by his manager, Gene Lamont. He said, hey, the DH spot is open. And this is after Bell had worked very hard to rehabilitate the leg. And, you know, he had the knee surgery. And that challenge, I think George answered. He had that terrific series in Detroit where he hit the 3 home runs and drove in 9. Drove a ball very deep against Bob Welch here in Oakland last week. But he's going to be very meaningful. I don't know if they're going to hit Ventura behind Frank Thomas or Bell. Could be right-left. We don't know. But George Bell is certainly somebody who really commands respect, and the fact he may be playing against the Jays, his former team, is going to be extra added inspiration. And he does have more RBIs than anybody else in baseball the last 9 years. So this is a quality guy who's starting to get hot with the bat right now. He could be a big difference.
Okay, sticking to Bo Jackson, also homer today. So the White Sox get a little bit of depth in their hitting. We got a lot more to talk about in this hour when we continue the other part of the NL East race. We showed you the Phils, but the Expos could pick up a game after all. After all, we're playing the Mets. And also, we'll go to the Sky Dome where Don Mattingly and the Yankees were hanging by a thread, looking to extend the season any way they could.
Baseball Tonight is brought to you by Gant. Clothes for the man comfortable in his own skin.
Welcome back to Baseball Tonight. What the Yankees had hoped would be a critical showdown at Sky Dome this weekend has turned into New York facing the possibility of being the team that allowed the Jays to clinch the East for the 3rd straight year. Toronto's won the East 4 times overall previously, and in order to make this one like the others, namely on Canadian soil, they'd have to beat Jim Abbott, The Orioles began the day in better position than the Yankees, but facing a duet with Detroit, they did get an outstanding outing from Arthur Rhodes, who gave up just 3 hits to those men, Davis, Trammell, and Fielder. But they were kind of long hits, especially Davis's. They were all gone, but check out where Davis has landed. 452 feet off the back wall, the longest ever at Camden Yards. Trammell's made it into the bullpen. Fielder's wasn't exactly a pop shot. 5-0 on those 3 taters. Gullickson was up 6-2 in the 6th, but he couldn't stand the prosperity. Harold Baines, doing his Eric Davis impersonation, got it to 6-3, but that's as close as they got. Phillips goes opposite field. He loves to hit in Camden Yards. 9-4 the final. Fryman also went 3 for 5 as the Tigers open up the first game of a doubleheader with the big bats banging out a dozen hits and wrapping Arthur Rhodes with the long ball. The loss assures the Jays no worse than a tie for the AL East title. Gullickson gets his first win since being named August Player of the Month. In the second game, the Orioles then are facing elimination. Meaningless by the wretched road trip that preceded it, losing the opening 2 games in Boston, Cleveland, and Milwaukee. And the Yanks' last journey outside the Bronx also did them in when New York pitching got ripped in Texas, Kansas City, and County Stadium, and they never recovered. Now, Peter, the Jays themselves said they gave everyone a chance. New York had the best of them. They tied 9 times, but never got over them. What happened to the Yankees and Orioles down the stretch? Toronto finally put it together, but New York and Baltimore can only blame themselves.
Well, until the last 3 weeks, both the Orioles and the Yankees had every single opportunity in the world to go out and win it. And then even all they had to do was stay with the Yankees, and they didn't. They just completely collapsed in the month of September. I mean, you look at the Yankee pitching, that's the first cause. Jim Abbott takes a lot of the blame because of 11-13. He is a disappointment. Melito Perez is a big disappointment. And they ended up with too many Huttons and Johns and Kamenicki's having trouble. Their starters have won 4 games this entire month of September. It's kind of sad. Their big guys just didn't step up. Danny Tartabull had a rough month. Don Mattingly and Wade Boggs didn't exactly tear down the world. And as for the Orioles, I mean, yeah, it was true. Mussina and Olson's injuries really hurt them. And they don't really have that big franchise hitter, but come on, they played terrible baseball. Going 3-6 on that road trip. I mean, 3 teams that were out of it. Then also, I mean, the way they play, we saw McLemore get picked off. There was a play, crucial play in the first game, where Brady Anderson, with runners on 2nd and 3rd, hit a high fly ball off the right field fence. 1 run scored. Brady got thrown out at 2nd. The other guy stopped at 3rd. I think that what we're going to see are a lot of changes. I'm not sure Johnny Oates is going to make it through this. I think you see the Yankees go out, get a leadoff hitter like a Ricky Henderson, and get a couple of starting pitchers, and I think they know, at least Miss Age, you can't be giving him $4.5 million. They need a closer, too.
Yeah, things got so exciting for a while in both those cities. Not a lot to look forward to for either of them for the coming year, so changes on the way there. As for New York's other team, the Mets are trying not to lose more games than the Braves and Giants combined. The Expos went for the sweep at Shea, and with the Phils having lost, Montreal had a chance to get within 4 for this final week of the season. Could they close out the Mets? Montreal not quite on top. One of the reasons Kirk Reeder may be through for the year. He and Dennis Martinez enjoying their weekend in Shea, though, but Jeff Kent gets robbed on the routine line drive. He has never appreciated that dugout camera, taking it out for about the 4th time this year, and then taking Ken Hill out of the yard. A grand slam, the first of his career. The Mets blow open a game to a 7-2 lead. Then Joe Orsulak slips sliding away and making the grab to pick up Dave Tailgater. Check it out again. He almost discombobulated himself, but still made the defensive gem. And Dallas Green wishing luck to Felipe Alou. but he didn't help his cause much as the Mets pull out the final game of the series, winning it 9-3 to keep them at 102 on the loss column. Kent is the first second baseman in Met history to reach the 20-homer level. The Expos have all but evaporated. They fly on to Florida. The Phil's magic number is down to 3 now with Montreal's loss, but Philly will play the rest of their games on the road. The one faint hope for the Expos. Lots more to get to, including the Nolan Ryan conversation and today's other game with Andres Galarraga trying to bounce back from an 0-for on Saturday as he chases the batting title. He had a big day. And the Pirates are planning for their future. Is the bunch they brought up ready for the bigs? Maybe. Welcome back to the show as we whip through Sunday's other games. The Cubs conclude in Pittsburgh. They'd won 4 in a row. They're still eyeing third place. 6 games over 500 for the first time since they won the division in 1989. Playing a doubleheader after rough weather on Saturday, Paul Wagner has been pitching well for the Pirates. He strikes out Dwight Smith, does it to him again in the 4th. Dwight just gave up on that one. Career-high 8 strikeouts, a triplet against Smith. Meanwhile, Steve Traxel to Jerry Goff. It is God! God's first home run since 1990 to tie it at 1. It stayed that way to the 8-2 outs, bases loaded. Will Bill Brennan, the journeyman, be able to get Jeff King? No, he reaches down and bangs it into the gap to clear the bases. A 3-run double. King having a good RBI here. 93 on the season. The Pirates go on to win it 5-1. The snap. The Cubs winning streak. Wagner has won 3 in a row. 1 run, 8 strikeouts in 8 innings. Garcia had 3 hits in the game, a triple and a steal, part of his afternoon. Second game of the doubleheader. Great pitching performance from Tim Wakefield, who's been a lost cause this year. But he comes back and he gets his first win as a starter since April. A 5-hit shutout of the Cubs, who started so well this weekend and end with a doubleheader disaster. At Joe Robbie, the Cards wrapping up with the Cubs now at a safe distance. Taking on the Marlins, they have put on their hitting shoes this weekend. Bernard Gilkey against David Weathers in the second with 2 aboard. Already up 1-0. Chuck Carr lets it bounce away, and Pappas and Jones give Gilkey his 68th and 69th RBIs. He's at it again in the 6th off Rob Nen. A solo shot, his 16th of the year, makes it 7-1. Then Mike Perez with a bullet that almost took off his hat, let alone his head. Henry Cotto doing the damage. Perez checking to see if everything's still there, and the victory was still in hand. 10-7, they wrap out 15 hits. It's Omar Oliveira's first start since June 2nd. It got him his first win as a starter since April 25th of this year. 1 earned run pitching into the 6th, and he wasn't around to get his head taken off. Gilkey and Royer each had 3 RBIs apiece. At Denver, the Rockies last game at Mile High, hosting the Reds, another huge house on hand. Reds up 1-0, and Andres Galarraga, who went 0 for 3 on Saturday, gets one up into that atmosphere. A solo shot, his teammates convinced him to come out and take a curtain call in front of the last home crowd of the year. And they go on to get 3 hits on Galarraga. And he also set an expansion record, 97 RBIs this year. His current average is at 379. That was his 22nd home run. The final total attendance, 4,483,350. By far the largest ever, and they gave away 5 cars in appreciation. And incidentally, the Rockies win 14 of their last 18 at home. They finished 3 games under 500 at home. They are 31-17 the past month and a half, the 3rd best record in baseball. At Dodger Stadium, Mark Portugal, after his 11th straight win, facing Mike Piazza. And he reaches a milestone in the 1st. He drives in Brett Butler, his 100th RBI, the first Dodger in 10 years to drive in 100 runs. Imagine that, first since Pedro Guerrero in '83. And Arcedeno, though, did his Piazza imitation. He ripped the tape, he hit it so hard. It's his 9th of the year. The Astros leading 3-1. Then in the 9th, clinging to a 1-run lead, Caminiti makes the clutch defensive play, gets Karros. With Doug Jones on the mound, Portugal picks up his win. The win is 11th in a row. Winning at 5-4, Jones picks up his 25th save. Portugal is unbeaten in his last 15 starts, dating back to July the 7th. Still to come on Baseball Tonight, the Nolan Ryan conversation. The all-time strikeout king looks back on his career, including how great he thinks he is, and also his thoughts on the subject of cheating. Before we hear from Nolan Ryan and see how George Brett went wild, a look inside the numbers. With both retiring, they'll head up the Hall of Fame class of '99. These are some of their most impressive achievements. You see where Brett ranks all-time, 12th in hits, 5th in doubles, tied for 57th in home runs, but an awful lot for a guy that did the kind of hitting that he did. And Nolan Ryan tops in strikeouts, of course, also more walks than any pitcher in history. Not all of these glorious stats, but tied for 12th in all-time victories at 324. Nolan Ryan called it a career before he started this 27th season, the longest run in baseball history. This is not the way he wanted it to end, but our Mark Schwartz sat down with him before he blew out his elbow in Seattle and reflected on what has been most significant in this storied span.
I think at one time I was probably as dominating as there was in the league. There wasn't a lot. There was a couple that got a lot of exposure, Jack McDowell, and so that whole situation was an overkill. I think that if you went back and asked Robin about it, he probably wished that he hadn't done it. And I personally wish that situation would have never happened, but that's part of the game, and it happened.
Do you think that McDowell, though, had a valid point that the umps do protect you and that there is a double standard?
In fact, I think it's the other way around. I think the umps probably are more stringent as far as the strike zone with me, because I don't think they want the attention that, hey, they're giving Nolan Ryan advantage of the strike zone because of his age or whatever. Well, you have to realize that in the game, whether it's a balk move, whether it's a phantom double play, those things are part of the game. Now, when you say cheating, there's that gray area. And using pine tar to help your curveball, stuff like that. Those are things that are done in the game that are accepted as part of the game. So I wouldn't sit here and tell you, no, that I wouldn't do those things.
Including scuffing the ball?
Right, at times. But I don't do that.
But you have done it at times?
No.
Would you tell me if you had?
No, I wouldn't tell you if I had.
You've probably been asked a million times, but how would you like to be remembered?
I don't even think about that.
You know you'll be remembered.
I don't even think about it. You know, people will remember you for whatever it is they want to remember you for. You know, you don't control that, and I don't think about that. I just go about my business the way I feel like I should, and however people want to remember me is fine.
Well, that was pretty good. Does he or doesn't he? Yes, I do. No, I don't.
Yeah,
but
well,
it's pretty obvious the way he pitches. Dave, you faced him. This is one of the toughest guys that ever lived. If you ever go over a span, there's pretty hard to pick out one thing or the other. But what is most memorable to you about Nolan Ryan?
I think just absolutely and positively the ultimate power pitcher, Gary. I mean, the one statistic that jumps out, maybe better than the 5,714 strikeouts, which is what he ended up with. He struck out 10 batters or more 215 times, which nobody else in baseball history has ever had 100. I mean, that is the ultimate power pitcher in the game. But I think respect, the fact he was a man's man, that his teammates always looked up to him, I think that's what I'll remember. I mean, Nolan knew his time was coming. He just didn't know it was going to end this way. I think more than anything else, he wanted to bring a championship to the state of Texas, and I think maybe that's what drove him back one more time. But on the other side of the coin, George Brett, he knew his time was coming, but he elected not to play out the string. I think it was because he had such high standards for himself and realized he couldn't quite play to those standards anymore.
Yeah, you know, that's an amazing point, Peter, because he was leading the team in RBIs. He was second in home runs. For the Royals, he was having a pretty good year, but it didn't meet his standards. He goes out, Ryan goes out. If a couple of these other guys that we expect to go out, could this be the greatest class of all time in '99?
Well, pretty close. I mean, Fisk is certain, Nolan's certain. I mean, George is obvious. And I think, you know, the question is, what do you remember George most for? The home runs. I remember for two things. One, I don't know if I ever knew anybody who loved playing the game anymore and was more fun to be around. I know I'll miss him. But the other thing, the one event, Bobby Cox walking him in the '85 playoffs with the bases loaded. Walked him intentionally. And George, yeah, of course he's going to go in. The other two, Rich Gossett says he wants to come back to spring training next year with the A's. I think he's a sure Hall of Fame. The other one, of course, is Robin Yount. Indications are that he will come back next year. Then the question is, well, will he have to go elsewhere, or can the Brewers afford the $3 million? No, they probably can't afford the $3 million, but they can afford less to not bring him back after all the Paul Molitor business. In fact, it really probably helps Robin's negotiating stance that Paul Molitor is going to clinch the American League East in Milwaukee in the next couple of days.
A big day for George Brett as he prepares to bid goodbye to Kansas City fans in Kauffman Stadium. And also Randy Johnson would need a dozen strikeouts to get to 300. We'll check out and see if he got them as we do the rest of baseball coming up after this. Welcome back to Baseball Tonight. Friday at Kauffman Stadium, George Brett sat out. Saturday, he confirmed that these would be his final days as a Royal then went 1 for 5 with an RBI. Sunday afternoon against the Angels, something more along the lines of what they're used to from him in Kansas City. They were in a tight battle with the Angels. Brett takes one out, a 3-run shot in the 4th inning. Part of a big offensive day for Kansas City, but it was tied at 8, and they went to extra innings in the 10th. Brett, with nobody on, connects. It's headed for the wall. Back to the bullpen. Could it be? Yes! His second home run of the day. What a dramatic ending in George Brett style. He wins it 9-8 to a standing O. It's Brett's first 5 RBI games since May of '88. He now has 1,119 extra base hits. He passes Jimmy Fox and Ted Williams. He's 10th all-time in that category. He's got 3 more games with Cleveland at Kansas City. He finishes his career at Arlington, where he would have gone against Ryan if Ryan hadn't blown out his elbow. At the Kingdome, another great story. Randy Johnson, looking for a slice of history of his own, goes 10 innings, strikes out 13, gets strikeout number 301, but he doesn't get the decision. The A's come back and win it in the 12th, 3-2. But it is a spectacular day for Randy Johnson, who wore number 34 in honor of Nolan Ryan, whose chat with him last year has helped Johnson get his pitching career together. Coming into this season, the 300 barrier had been broken just 22 times, half a dozen of those by Ryan. Since the last expansion in 1977, these are the only guys to do it. Randy Johnson joining some very exclusive company. More highlights for you as we finish up Sunday's activity. An ugly day in Boston, but a gorgeous catch from Jeff McNeely coming on. His second great catch of this weekend series. He robbed Dave McCarty there. Paul Quantrill, the emergency starter for Roger Clemens, who is finished for the year. Kirby Puckett takes him into the right field corner. Jeff Rabelais comes in. Rabelais being the 85th RBI for Puckett, then Rabelais losing his sense of direction. But Tim Naring forgot he was coming, and Rabelais with the deception gets in with the stolen base, his second of the day. The Twins fool the Red Sox 5-2. Tremblay picking up his 6th win. Aguilera finishing with his 33rd save. In the next to last weekend at Cleveland, top of the 4th, Tribe up 1-0. John Jaha takes Dave Malicki out of the yard. Jaha has jacked 17 home runs, ties the game at 1. Brewers up 3-2 by the 6th. Jaha up and out again off Bill Wirtz. Another solo shot, 18th of the year, 4-2 Brews. But Sam Horn, who has had the best home run year of anyone in professional baseball, hit 38 of them at AAA, hit 4 of them in the playoffs, then has come up to Cleveland. 4 of his 10 hits for the Indians have been goners, including that one off Ricky Bonas, and the Tribe wins it 6-4. Municipal Stadium was built in 1932. Ruth, no home runs there. Garrett 1. John Jaha 2 in a losing cause. Well, that leads us right into going, gone. On our way out, we head to our next segment in which we'll look at defense. Looks at those that went out of the yard, including a pair from George Brett as he goes out.